These
It was so not right.
are time stewards ruined Formula One.
Yes, Jerry Bootson has put up a new fast start to the race on fresh.
At number 10, we look at the 2019 Canadian Grand Prix and a highly debated decision. In a year of fierce competition, it was Ferrari and Mercedes ultimately slugging it out for the Constructors' and Drivers' Championship. As the season returned to Montreal, Hamilton and Vettel were locked in a close battle for the lead. With Lewis attempting the overtake on the German, Vettel aggressively defended the position before encountering some oversteer heading into turn 4. Vettel snuck onto the grass before returning to the racing line, with Lewis complaining he'd been pushed off.
You just came on the track so dangerous.
Yeah, copy Lewis, we're on it.
Numerous replays showed it as being a racing incident, but the stewards would award Vettel a 5-second penalty.
Vettel has 5-second penalties.
No one in the pundit or commentary box would agree with the penalty.
They didn't do anything wrong.
Which ultimately cost Vettel the win. A frustrated Vettel was seen swapping the 1 and 2 signs in the paddock. But a few years earlier, Vettel was the one doing some of the complaining. So at number 9, we look at the time turnabout might have been fair play. The 2016 Mexican Grand Prix was one of the highlights of the season, which saw Hamilton and Rosberg slug it out each weekend. Ferrari was battling for 3rd place, and with Max Verstappen making a name for himself, it became apparent that his aggressive driving would frustrate others on the grid. Vettel, who was in prime position, was soon to streak past Verstappen on the back straight. However, the Dutch driver defended ferociously, and after cutting through the grass and rejoining, it was clear Verstappen gained a lasting advantage. The problem is that it took the stewards until the checkered flag to make a decision. In fact, Verstappen was demoted just before the podium appearance, and even after Vettel received his trophy, he would later be demoted, handing 3rd place to Ricciardo, who was mostly an observer in 5th place. This was truly confusing and frustrating to say the least. Vettel seems to make it onto many of these naughty lists, with another incident at number 8 involving the German happening at Baku in 2017. Even though Vettel had apologized for his actions in Azerbaijan, plenty of controversy still surrounded the decision. During a safety car moment, Vettel was following Hamilton, who was in the lead and behind the safety car. However, as the safety car was coming in, Lewis ferociously stepped on the brakes, with Vettel careering straight into the back of the Mercedes. Vettel accused the Briton of brake testing him and pulled alongside the Mercedes to give a shunt of his own. This didn't go well with the stewards when they gave the German a 10-second stop-go penalty. Vettel did ultimately apologise, but if we combine this one with the next one, you can just see how controversial the FIA rules can be. At number 7 on our list, we look at Hamilton and Verstappen in Saudi Arabia during the 2021 F1 season. With Hamilton in the best car on the grid, he had been reeling in Verstappen and looked sure to overtake him. However, Verstappen was defending, and at the chicane on turn 1, he would cut across and gain an advantage. Verstappen accepted his guilt for cutting the chicane before he was given his orders to allow Hamilton to pass. Verstappen waited until he was on the main straight and simply put on the brakes, with Hamilton slamming into the back of him. Debate is still ongoing into whether Lewis actually received the order that Max would let him pass. Ultimately, Verstappen was awarded a 10-second time penalty, but many comparisons about brake testing were drawn between these 2 points, and it was unclear which decisions were correct. Even earlier, the Ferrari team was once again in the firing line, but this was more due to a lack of rules than a steward's issue. Our number 6 goes to the 2002 Ferrari dominance. During the 2002 season, Michael Schumacher and Ferrari were the dominating force. However, teammate Rubens Barrichello would often surprise and drive his Ferrari to take the lead. After about 6 laps, Rubens heard team orders on the radio that he should let his teammate pass. No one expected that this would truly happen, as team radios had only recently become something available to the public to listen to. However, Schumacher kept on reeling in the Brazilian and finally passed him just before the finishing line. And what was the punishment? Nothing! The problem is that there was no rule in place to prevent this, and boos would rain down on Schumacher as he was on the top step of the podium. Such behaviour would be stopped with the rulebook being updated, but it's not uncommon in the modern era to see such ugly team tactics rear its head. Now, this was frustrating to say the least, but when someone disqualified keeps on racing, it becomes a pain. This is exactly what happened at our number 5 spot in the battle between Senna and Mansell. At the Portuguese Grand Prix of 1989, a battle ensued between Mansell and Senna after the latter had been beaten to the start by the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. Mansell calmly overtook the Brazilian before making it past Berger in the Ferrari as well as for the lead of the race. However, Mansell made a massive blunder in the pitting phase when he overshot his pit box. The Brit would put the car in reverse and simply proceed to reverse back into position. Unfortunately, this maneuver was banned in the regulations and a driver had to exit the pit box before entering after the next lap. But the stewards were not entirely to blame for what ensued, and after showing Mansell the black flag, which meant he was disqualified, he would simply defy these orders. Mansell would continue racing and battle the McLaren of Senna. This didn't end well, as both drivers would eventually crash out of the race, giving Berger the easy victory. Now, could the stewards have done more to prevent this from happening? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. Next on our list at number 4, we can see what happens when the stewards decide to disqualify someone from the championship, which is a bit drastic to say the least. In the controversial season of 1997, the battle was essentially between Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve. Heading to Jerez, Schumacher had a narrow lead in the championship by a single point. This meant the Canadian had to win to become world champion. Villeneuve put his car in pole position after qualifying, but Schumacher overtook him at the start. However, Villeneuve would ferociously pursue the German, and on lap 48, the Canadian dived down the inside. With the Ferrari now out, Villeneuve proceeded to the end of the race, with even Häkkinen being allowed past. As punishment for the incident, Schumacher would be disqualified from the championship, losing his second place and removing the season from existence for the eventual 7-time world champion. Many felt that this decision ruined the season in the end. But not all decisions ruined the season. Some, like the 2017 US Grand Prix, only frustrate, and Niki Lauda would rule it the worst Formula 1 decision ever in our number 3 spot. During the race at Austin, Verstappen was hunting down the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen for the final podium spot. The young Verstappen was pushing and pulling him with his massive pace, but as the saying goes, it's one thing to catch and another to overtake. Verstappen was relentless in trying to get past the Ferrari, and on the final lap, he pulled off an impressive move, which saw him leave Kimi out of position in turn 15. Max continued down the inside, completing the move by turn 16. However, a very strict interpretation of the rules was applied, suggesting Verstappen hadn't left enough space for Raikkonen. Max would essentially be removed from the podium, whilst already in the cool-down room. Mercedes chairman at the time, Niki Lauda, labelled the decision as one of the worst ever made by the stewards. But Lauda has been vocal about the FIA decision-making even before his time as the chairman of the Mercedes team. At number 2, we look at Lewis being stripped of his 2008 win in Belgium. In a season where the championship was decided by a single point, this moment in Belgium could have changed the outcome. During the race, Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen were battling for the lead, and whilst both drivers put on a show, it was ultimately the Brit who would come out as the leader. Lewis would take the checkered flag, but the stewards were nowhere to be seen in making a decision. It was only after the race that the stewards determined that Lewis gained an advantage by cutting through the infamous bus stop chicane. He was given a 25-second time penalty for the incident, which resembled a stop-go penalty. Hamilton was ultimately relegated to third, with Niki Lauda ripping into the stewards afterward. But moving on to our number 1 spot, this will be controversial to say the least. Many of you may or may not agree as we look at Abu Dhabi 2021. In one of the toughest competitions ever, the 2021 Formula 1 season saw Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton clash on numerous occasions for the title. Verstappen managed to pull ahead during the middle part of the season, but since the Brazilian Grand Prix, Lewis was on fire in his newly upgraded Mercedes. Heading into Abu Dhabi, it would come down to the winner of the race winning the championship. During the race, Max had an abysmal start from pole position and Lewis Hamilton was left free to take the lead. However, Lewis did cut the chicane on the back straight, but no penalty was given, and the stewards ruled he didn't gain an advantage. Max continued to pursue Lewis to no avail, with Red Bull even sacrificing second driver Sergio Perez in an attempt to slow down the Mercedes. But with Hamilton cruising to victory, Nicholas Latifi smashed into the walls. With only a few laps left, many believed the race would end under the safety car, but Red Bull and Verstappen pitted just in case. With 2 laps remaining, race director Michael Massey informed teams that only a few of the lap cars would pass, but there still wasn't time for a lap to take place. It was just before the final technical section when the safety car was pulled in and a final lap ensued. Verstappen overtook Hamilton for the lead, eventually winning the race and the championship. Now, this rule is so complicated that we could make an entire video to explain it, but the decision was appealed and legal action was even threatened. Ultimately, some would support it and others believe Mercedes had been screwed. Now, not only stewards can shock the world with their decisions. Click on this video for 15 times Max Verstappen shocked the world. Come on, I know you want to.